It was a quiet evening in our peaceful neighborhood. The sun had just set, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and purple. I was in the living room sipping my coffee, while my wife Rachel was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. Then came the knock, a sharp, deliberate pounding on the front door. Not the kind of knock a friendly neighbor makes, not even a delivery driver. This was different, authoritative, demanding. I frowned. Something felt off. When I opened the door, two men stood on my porch. Both wore crisp navy uniforms, with badges clipped to their belts. One was tall and broad-shouldered, with a buzz cut and dark sunglasses, even though the sun had already set. The other was shorter, stocky, with a stiff, practiced stance, like someone playing a role he wasn't entirely comfortable with. "Evening, sir." The tall one spoke first, flashing his badge with a quick flick of his wrist. "I'm Officer Daniels. This is Officer Reed. We're with the Maple Ridge HOA Enforcement Unit." I blinked. HOA Enforcement Unit? That was a joke, right? "We're here regarding a serious violation committed by your wife," the shorter one, Reed added. I raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. "We have reason to believe she's been involved in activities that breach the security policies of this community. We need to speak with her immediately." My stomach twisted. I'd lived here for years. Our HOA was a small group of volunteers, no enforcement unit, no officers, and definitely no one with the power to investigate residents. "What kind of violation?" I asked, folding my arms. Reed stepped forward, almost aggressively. "Sir, we don't have time to argue. Either bring her out now, or we'll have to take action." I didn't like their tone. Something was seriously wrong. "Rachel," I called out, turning toward the kitchen. She appeared in the hallway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "What's going on?" Before I could answer, they moved. Daniels and Reed lunged forward, grabbing Rachel by the arms. She gasped, but didn't fight. My heart pounded as I stepped toward them, my instincts screaming to stop them, but then I saw her face. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't even surprised. Rachel stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable, almost as if she'd been expecting this. What the hell was going on? Maple Ridge wasn't the kind of place where things like this happen. It was a quiet, upper-middle-class neighborhood, the kind with well-manicured lawns, neatly trimmed hedges, and seasonal wreaths on every front door. People here hosted barbecues on weekends, exchanged pleasantries at the mailbox, and argued over petty HOA rules, like the length of grass or the color of a front door. The biggest scandal in recent memory had been a dispute over someone's Christmas lights staying up past February. And yet, here we were. Two so-called HOA officers were on my doorstep, aggressively trying to take my wife. Rachel, my wife, was a tech consultant. At least that's what she always told people. Her job seemed simple enough on the surface. Cybersecurity, software analysis, remote consulting for major firms. She worked from home most days, occasionally traveling for conferences or client meetings. But deep down, I always knew there was more to it. There were moments, subtle, fleeting, where something didn't quite add up. Like the way she always sat facing the exits in restaurants, or how she could memorize entire conversations after hearing them once, or the way she'd sometimes get phone calls in the middle of the night, step outside to answer, and return with a completely different energy. I had my suspicions, but I never pushed. Then again, maybe I should have. Because now, as I watched these two strangers flash their so-called badges, something inside me snapped into focus. There is no HOA enforcement team in this neighborhood. Maple Ridge's Homeowners Association consisted of a few retirees and busybodies who bickered over landscaping regulations, not an armed task force. They had no power to enforce anything, let alone storm into someone's home and make an arrest. Yet these two men stood here, acting as if they owned the place. "Sir, step back," Daniels ordered, his grip tightening on Rachel's arm. I clenched my fists. "You need to let go of my wife, now!" Reed, shorter, stockier, let out a sharp laugh. "Sir, don't make this difficult. Your wife is in direct violation of neighborhood security policies. Either she comes with us or we escalate." Rachel still didn't resist. She stood unnaturally still, her face blank, calculating. And that's when I realized something terrifying. She wasn't resisting because she knew something I didn't. Before I could act, Reed shoved Rachel forward. The sudden movement jolted me into action. "Hey!" I stepped toward them, but Daniels quickly raised a hand, pressing it against my chest like a warning. That's when I heard it, gasps from the neighbors. I glanced around. People had started to gather. The Johnsons from across the street stood on their porch, frozen mid-conversation. Old Mrs. Henderson peeked out from behind her curtains. A teenager 2 houses down had his phone up, filming. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Reed turned, glaring at the onlookers. "Nothing to see here. Stay inside." But nobody moved. Maple Ridge wasn't used to this kind of scene. The idea of HOA officers, if they even believed that, shoving a woman into custody on the front lawn in broad daylight, that wasn't normal. And it was clear that people were starting to realize it. Rachel finally spoke, her voice calm, measured. "Gentlemen, if you don't mind, I'd like to see a copy of the charges." Daniel smirked. "You can read them at the station." That's when it clicked. They weren't real HOA officers. They weren't even real law enforcement. This was a kidnapping. I took a step forward, lowering my voice. "You're making a mistake." Daniel smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No, Mr. Carter, you did." And with that, they forced Rachel toward the waiting SUV. Rachel didn't struggle. She didn't fight back, didn't scream, didn't even demand answers. She just let them take her, her expression unreadable, her body unnaturally still. And that's what scared me the most. These weren't real law enforcement officers, and we both knew it. Daniels tightened his grip on her arm, jerking her forward. "You are under investigation for unauthorized surveillance activities," he declared. "We have evidence that you've been illegally monitoring private HOA communications. That's a serious offense." Surveillance? That made no sense. Rachel wasn't some hacker breaking into homeowner association emails. Or was she? For the first time, I felt an uneasy flicker of doubt. Had I been living with someone I didn't truly know? I shook the thought away. No, this was a lie, a setup. I stepped forward. "You can't just take her like this. Where's your warrant?" Daniel shot me a smug look. "We don't need one. HOA bylaws give us full jurisdiction over neighborhood security." *T. I stood my ground. "This HOA doesn't even have an enforcement division." Daniels exhaled sharply like he was done playing nice. "Sir, step back. If you interfere, we'll have no choice but to detain you too." Reed, the shorter one, pressed a hand against my chest, shoving me back just enough to make his point clear. Rage burned inside me. I wasn't just going to let them take my wife. Rachel turned slightly, just enough to meet my eyes, and that's when she gave me a look. A small, almost imperceptible flick of her gaze, like a silent signal. It wasn't fear. It wasn't panic. It was calculation. She knew what was happening. She was already thinking 5 steps ahead. But before I could react, they forced her toward the street. That's when I saw it. A black SUV. Sitting at the curb, engine running. Tinted windows, no plates. Waiting. My pulse pounded. This wasn't an arrest. This was a goddamn abduction. "Rachel!" I surged forward, but Daniel spun, slamming a hand against my chest. "Stand down!" he barked. I ignored him. "This is kidnapping!" I yelled, my voice cutting through the tension. The neighbors were still watching, whispering, cameras still recording. But these men didn't care anymore. Reed yanked open the SUV's back door and shoved Rachel inside. The second she disappeared behind the tinted glass, something inside me snapped. I lunged forward, but Daniels reached for his hip. A gun! It wasn't police-issued. It wasn't even properly holstered. It looked like a weapon a street thug would carry, a scratched-up Glock tucked under his belt with no safety strap. He didn't aim it, didn't pull it out all the way, but just the threat of it was enough. I froze. He smirked. That was the reaction he wanted. The SUV's door slammed shut, the locks engaged. My breath came in short, sharp bursts as I watched the scene play out like a nightmare in slow motion. Rachel, taken. The SUV's engine revved. I was losing her. Then, my phone buzzed. I didn't think. I just answered. A calm, authoritative voice came through the line. Mr. Carter, don't panic. This is Special Agent Walker from the FBI. My heart stopped. We're tracking them. Stall them for 60 more seconds. Agent Walker's voice was calm but firm. No hesitation, no uncertainty. This was already in motion. I had no time to think, only to act. The SUV's engine roared to life. The tires shifted slightly as the driver, Daniels, prepared to peel out of the neighborhood. I did the only thing I could. I ran straight into the road. Neighbors gasped. I could hear them shouting, someone screaming, "He's gonna get himself killed!" Daniels slammed the brakes. The SUV lurched forward slightly, then stopped, just inches from my knees. Reed in the passenger seat rolled down his window, his face red with rage. "Move, now!" "Not a chance," I shot back, planting myself firmly in front of the vehicle. Daniels clenched the wheel, knuckles turning white. He was calculating something. Could he just run me over? Would the neighbors intervene? And then I saw it. Phones. Everywhere. Neighbors were recording. Some were live streaming. Even the teenager, Toby, who usually wasted time on his skateboard, had his phone up, camera pointed right at the SUV. Daniels noticed too. His confidence cracked. Reed turned to him. "We have to go. Now!" Daniels was about to hit the gas when the first siren cut through the air. A deep, throaty wail, loud, commanding. Not local police, something bigger. Then, another, and another. From the corner of the street, 3 black SUVs appeared. Federal vehicles, no markings, no hesitation. They moved fast, too fast. Daniel's hands clenched the wheel. Reed looked over his shoulder, then back at me. He realized it. They were trapped. Shasterisk T. More sirens. The first SUV skidded to a stop behind Daniels. Doors flew open, and men in tactical gear flooded the street. FBI. The second SUV cut off their escape route. The third. That was just overkill. Daniels and Reed froze. Weapons weren't raised, but they didn't need to be. The fake cops had already lost. One of the agents, a tall, broad-shouldered man in a dark jacket, stepped forward. I knew his name before he even spoke. Special Agent Walker. His voice was ice cold. "Step out of the vehicle, now!" Daniels didn't move. He glanced at the rearview mirror, checked his side mirrors, probably calculating some desperate escape plan. Then, from the back of the SUV, a voice. Rachel. "Get out! It's over!" Daniel snapped his head back toward her. She was calm, smirking, like she had known this was coming all along. And that's when it hit me. She did. This was a setup, but not against her, against them. Walker took another step forward, barely masking his amusement. "You were played, Daniels." Daniels' breathing turned ragged. His hands shook on the wheel. His confidence? Gone. Reed was already cracking. His hands were raised slightly, sweat dripping down his forehead. Daniels clenched his jaw. His eyes darted left, right, looking for any way out. Then, he grabbed for his gun. He never even got it out. 3 agents moved at once. One yanked open the driver's door. Another ripped Daniels from the seat. The third, he had him pinned to the pavement before he even had a chance to resist. Reed barely fought. He tried to open the passenger door, but an agent tackled him instantly. Daniels hit the ground, chest first, his face smashing into the pavement. He groaned, struggling. "You set us up," he shouted. Walker knelt beside him, his voice low. "You should have done your homework," Daniels cursed, spitting onto the ground, but he had nothing left. It was over. Rachel stepped out of the SUV, unbothered. Still calm, still composed. Like this had been just another day at work. She adjusted her sleeves and looked down at Daniels. "Tell me," she said, tilting her head slightly. "Did you actually think this was going to work?" Daniels just glared at her. Walker chuckled. "Yeah, I had the same question." Rachel turned to me, finally acknowledging what had just happened. She gave me a small smile as if this was no big deal. But I wasn't smiling, because I knew this wasn't over, and Rachel knew it too. Daniels and Reed were face down on the pavement, their wrists locked in zip ties. FBI agents moved swiftly, securing the scene like it was just another day at the office. Neighbors stood frozen, whispering in stunned disbelief. Some had their phones out, still recording, not realizing they had just witnessed something much bigger than a fake HOA scam. Rachel stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching as two agents yanked Daniels onto his knees. His face was red with fury, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. "You set us up," he hissed at her. Rachel gave him that same calm, unreadable smirk. "No," she corrected. "I outplayed you." Walker knelt beside Daniels, his tone almost amused. "Let me guess," he said. "You thought she was just some quiet suburban housewife? A bored consultant? And that made her an easy target?" Daniels didn't answer, but the way his eyes flicked toward Rachel said it all. Walker chuckled. "Yeah, that was your first mistake." One of the agents popped open the trunk of the fake HOA SUV. A small black device was duct-taped under the back seat. He pulled it free, holding it up. The blinking red light was unmistakable. A GPS tracker. Walker's easygoing expression darkened. "This wasn't just a fake arrest," he said, turning toward me. "It was a full-blown abduction attempt." My stomach twisted. Rachel wasn't being arrested for some nonsense HOA violation. She was being taken. And if these men had succeeded, if the FBI had been even 1 minute later, she would have been gone. My fists clenched at the thought. One of the agents crouched beside Reed, who was far less composed than his partner. His forehead dripped sweat. His breathing was erratic. "Who are you working for?" the agent asked. Reed licked his lips, but didn't speak. Walker sighed. "You think staying quiet is going to help you? Daniels might be dumb enough to go down for this alone. But you're not built for this. So talk, now." Silence. Walker shook his head, standing. "No problem. We'll figure it out." A second set of black SUVs rolled onto the street. The crowd of neighbors shifted uneasily. This wasn't just an arrest. Something much bigger was at play. One of the back doors swung open, and a man in a dark suit stepped out. His presence alone made the entire street feel colder. I didn't need an introduction to know who he was. The FBI director. Walker and the other agents immediately straightened. "Mrs. Carter," the director said, his voice sharp, authoritative. "We need you. You're coming with us." Rachel exhaled softly, like she had been waiting for this. She turned to me. "And I knew what was coming." She stepped closer, resting a hand against my cheek. "I'll be back soon," she murmured. Then before I could say a word, she turned and got into the FBI vehicle. The door slammed shut. The SUV pulled away. I stood there watching as the woman I thought I knew, the woman who had just exposed a major criminal operation, disappeared into the night. "Behind me," the neighbors whispered, still piecing together what the hell had just happened. I didn't have an answer for them, because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The neighborhood was never the same after that night. By morning, the story had already spread like wildfire. Everyone had a theory. Some whispered that Rachel was an undercover spy. Others claimed she was a double agent. A few even believed this was all some elaborate government conspiracy. The videos of the takedown, of Daniels and Reed being slammed into the pavement, of Rachel stepping out of that black SUV completely unfazed, went viral. News reporters showed up by noon, cameras rolling, asking questions that no one could answer. Who were the fake HOA cops? Why did the FBI storm a quiet suburban street? And most importantly, who exactly was Rachel Carter? I stayed inside watching the news unfold on TV instead of through my window. The footage replayed on every major channel. Experts speculated. Theories ran wild. But none of them knew the truth. Not yet. I picked up my phone, staring at the last message Rachel had sent me before she left. Just 6 words. They weren't working alone. Be ready. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't over. Someone else was coming. And this time I wouldn't be caught off guard. Screen fades to black.